Okay, thank you so much. Good evening in Korea. Oh, by the way, good morning, Korea. Good evening, Brazil. And also good evening for those who are out of Brazil, out of Korea, maybe in the United States. Thank you so much for coming to our webinar to talk about the investment opportunities in Brazil. Before we get this started, let me introduce myself. My name is Soo-Jung Ko. I am a founding partner of Rondônia Consulting, which is an international consulting firm specialized in merger and acquisition investment. We focus on Latin America and Asia. Thank you again for your participation in this webinar. We have a very good content. So we have around 1 hour and 30 minutes. Here in Brazil, we are now 9 p.m. In Korea, I believe it is 9 a.m. So we start now, and the webinar will be finished by 10:30 a.m. in Korea and 10:30 p.m. in Brazil, okay, São Paulo. I would like to say a few words before we go. We start the content of our speech, our lecture. So the topic of our webinar is investment opportunities in Brazil, 2021 snapshots. We are going to talk about various matters. First, macroeconomic in Brazil, capacity to react and grow sustainably in business, navigating in the most appealing sectors and exploring investment opportunities for foreign companies, how to do business in a complex market, typical mistakes to avoid, and how to manage FX exposure when doing business in Brazil. Before I introduce the speakers, I would like to say my thank words to those institutions that supported us today. The first one is BRI Visa Migration Solutions, which is a company specialized in international mobility of people and visa. Thank you so much for your sponsorship, so that we could organize this webinar. Also, I would like to give my thank words to Korea Brazil Society, COBRAS, Brazilian Institute for International Business Relations Development, IBRE, DIEGLO, Korean Council on Latin America and the Caribbean. On behalf of the Korean Council Latin America and Caribbean, also we have representatives today, so thank you so much for your presence. Well, let me introduce our speakers. We have 3 distinguished speakers to talk about the investment opportunities in Brazil, mainly for the Korean companies, the reason why we arranged this webinar. So first speaker is Graziano Messana. Graziano Messana is an economist and entrepreneur. He has consolidated experience in startup processes, business management, and M&A. He graduated with honors in economics from Louis in Rome, and he worked in Europe in the finance and private equity sectors before moving to São Paulo in 2006 and founding GM Venture, which is interim management and advisory company that manages the investment of numerous foreign companies in Brazil. In several of them, Messana is acting as a board member. He is currently also the president of the Italian Chamber of Commerce in São Paulo. He's a frequent speaker in international events about Brazil and has participated as a professor in the Masters of Louis Rome, Bocconi Milan, and Alma Business School, Bologna. In 2017, he was awarded the title of Knight of the Italian Republic. So welcome, Graziano. Our second speaker is Sergio Costa. Sergio Costa is an entrepreneur with a solid leadership experience in foreign direct investments and international business in the public and private sectors. He strategically leads organizations to excellence via customer-oriented services in multicultural environments. Sergio led Invest São Paulo as the managing director, reaching the outstanding mark of 225 announced investments, exceeding 21 billion US dollars and 80,000 direct jobs. He's a seasoned public speaker and has delivered conferences in various countries. Sergio graduated in mechanical production engineering from the Federal University of Minas Gerais and holds a master's degree in organizational leadership from the Azusa Pacific University, California, United States. Before Invest São Paulo, Costa led organizations as Apex Brazil, AES Corporation, Sotrec, and Sebrae. He is the founder and CEO of String Strategy Investment Global Business. Finally, the third and last speaker is Ashley. Ashley has expertise across all aspects of a cross-border transaction, having spent over 15 years in a wide variety of FX industry roles in both Europe and North America. He saw a need within his extensive global investor network to simplify the way cross-border transactions were handled. Prior to founding Diagolo, Ashley was a director for 10 years at AFEX, one of the largest providers of foreign exchange payments in the world. There, he was responsible for the acquisition, management, and maintenance of corporate, institutional, and high net worth clients. Ashley created and led the institutional sales team at AFEX, and whilst under his watch, the team doubled revenues annually, developing a network and expertise across a variety of industries and investment strategies. So we have three distinguished speakers that prepared very good content on investment opportunities in Brazil. Before I give the words to the speakers, I would like to know if Mr. Timothy Lee, head of the Startup Accelerator of Korea for Latin America, is available to introduce himself. Timothy Lee, are you available?
Yes, I'm here. I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty, but I'm happy to join you guys today. To see you guys in Brazil, all the way on the other side of the globe. A Korean Council on Latin America and the Caribbean. We are an organization under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Normally, we would conduct a couple of business forums outside of Korea. Jointly with CABE, IDB, and sometimes with CAF. We do a lot of work related to exporting Korean model of smart city, but obviously there are many more industries than just industries related to smart city. So currently, I'm in charge of the Startup Accelerator Center, but I also work with small, medium-sized, and also with large, large cap companies. Right now at the moment, mobility seems to be very hot. So that is one area we're trying to focus on, electric mobility. So we're trying to export, some of that out to Latin America, and also we have a very great network because of the ministry's, operations in all of the countries around the world. So we work a lot also in Southeast Asia and parts of America and Europe. So. Mobility is one area we focus on. We also focus on the area related to metaverse. So we're talking about augmented reality, extended reality, figuring out how to leverage those technologies in terms of promoting commerce. And obviously, another kind of fun area that I've been focusing on is fashion technology as well as beauty technology. So those three are the sort of like the main areas I'm targeting at the moment, but it could change because who knows what industry will start trending again. So overall, just focusing on a lot of the industries that can go outside of Korea to the world, but also trying to figure out what industries in the foreign countries, especially Latin America, that can come into Korea and form joint partnerships with startups, with small medium enterprises, or conglomerates. So I'm here. I'm also a senior consultant at Delight Law Firm, which specializes in obviously corporate law, joint venture, startups, so on and so forth. So I'm here. If you want to holler, I'm sure Ko could share my information with you guys.
Thank you, Timothy Lee. Thank you. I think you have never been to Brazil, right?
I have a few friends who are living in Brazil, but I've
So you yourself have never been. Okay, so we already have a very good reason why you should come here, and also we should fly with the Sergio. Sergio has been to Korea. I don't know if Grazian has already been to Korea, so we have also very good reason to fly to Korea soon.
Not yet.
Okay, okay. So guys, let's get our webinar started because of the time. So Graziano, you are the first one, in second Sergio, and lastly Ashley. So once again, this webinar is being recorded. So if you have your microphone on, video on, please keep everything mute and turned off, because after this webinar is finished, we are going to share the recording on social media so that everybody can access the content. So again, thanks so much for your presence. So let's get it started. Graziano.
Okay, thank you very much for this invitation, and I'm very happy to join this first meeting with Korean investors. Right? Thank you, Sue. And I would like to share my screen and start with the presentation, and we discuss along this. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. So I prepared this presentation. I split in two parts, right? Macroeconomics in Brazil, first part, and after we go through how to do business in a complex market, typical mistake to avoid, right? So first of all, a kind of snapshot about Brazil. It's a very big country. It's the fifth largest country in the world. Is the ninth economy in the world. And in terms of GDP, you can see that the southeast of the area is the most important part and produce more than the half of the Brazilian GDP. But we can go through this slide to understand how big is Brazil, because, for example, all these countries that I put inside the Brazilian region fit in Brazil. So it's a very big country and big market as well. In terms of population, we saw that is the sixth largest population. You can see some information here in the slides. And also is the ninth GDP in the world. You can see the other country in this little chart. What foreign investor need to know? Brazil, the first producer, as well the first exporter, first or second in several commodities. And here you can find all the list. So we are recording the workshop, and you can have after these slides and information, of course. Brazil has a strong position in the US dollar. Here you can see last 10 years in terms of international reserve in dollar. So we can see that even during COVID, last 8 months, Brazil has preserved the reserve in dollar. We are talking about 350 billions. So, and this is a kind of unique country that in Latin America has this big reserve. In terms of capacity, its capacity to attract foreign direct investment, also Brazil is in a good position. We can see here the ranking of foreign direct investment. And Brazil in this moment is, how can I say, we have a low inflation and low interest rate, and is a kind of news in last years. As you can see here in 2015, 2016, we had 10% of inflation, and also we have more than 13% of interest rate. Now we have in a minimum, okay, we have 2.75 in terms of interest rate, really low, is a historic minimum of Brazil. And also we have a good inflation rate, more or less 3.5% for. And just one second. GDP evolution in Brazil. This is very important chart because it shows how Brazil, the capacity of Brazil to react in each crisis. Here in 2008, we had an external crisis, okay, and Brazil was able to go out very quickly. And here is in 2015, 2016, it was the worst crisis in Brazil of last 50 years. And if you can see, we had in 2015 and 2016 3.5 negative GDP, and in 2017 we had 1% positive. It means that Brazil in 1 year, in 12 months, grow 4.5 points in GDP. And in that moment, we had a very low stability in the political scenario. We had, remember, we had this kind of interest here and this kind of inflation here. And after, of course, the central bank didn't put money in the system. So what we have now, we have a Brazil that has interest rate very low, inflation very low, and the central bank injected a lot of money to help this moment of crisis due to the pandemic. So we have the main ratings agency that appoint 3.5 GDP in 2021, and this is the GDP evolution. Some fact about COVID. I prefer to skip because Brazil is not a champion in the management of this pandemic, but I mean, I can say that a big country, big problem. But some facts are there. Brazil has decided to avoid a proper lockdown, for better or worse. The situation, of course, remains critical, but at the moment, more than 10 million Brazilians are vaccinated, and expenditure and economical index consume in general terms are in line with the pre-COVID situation. The economic temperature in 2020, more than 300 operations of private equity realized, more than 1,000 M&A operation in 2020, and also we had at the end of the 2020 a record of a volume of investment in BR3. BR3 is the Brazilian stock exchange. So between BRIC, Brazil was able to reattract the speculative investor. And since we have in this moment a very low interest rate, million of physical people in Brazil are investing in the Brazilian stocks exchange. Continuing in terms of economic temperature, we had 27 IPO realized in 2020, and this trend, very interesting, continued in 2021, and we have another 40 IPO basically expected according to official data from ANBIMA. ANBIMA is the Brazilian Financial Market Association. So, some Korean investment in Brazil. I put it here, some big company, okay? But the most important point, what is the opportunity? The opportunity is for the small and medium Korean enterprise that can follow big company and become provider and enter in Brazil, because it's a huge opportunity, of course. Another couple of curiosity, Korean unicorn. We can see here, which is a unicorn, a startup in technology that with a turnaround with more than $1 million basically revenue. So we have a lot of Korean unicorn here. A very big Hoover brother was bought by a German delivery hero for $4 billion. So we can say, well done, Korea, good technology there. But also Brazil is very interesting because Brazil, here you can see 12, 10 unicorn. But the difference is that Brazil is a very big market. So, which is the idea? In 2021, Brazil will deliver probably around 15, 17 unicorn, and the big market is here. So, try to imagine a good technology coming from Korea and take the opportunity of a big market in Brazil. This is a window, of course. And I also insert here a slide talking about e-commerce and mobile commerce. You can see that this industry was grow here even during the last crisis, double digit after. And in terms of mobile commerce, that we are talking about e-commerce with the smartphone, we can share that we have 120 million mobile lines here in Brazil.
I would like to ask Sergio and Ashley, if you have time, while Graziano is coming back. Sergio, yeah.
I'll jump on here because this is actually grows. I actually did a very similar piece to the technology sector in Brazil recently. There's some really exciting pieces of information around the technology sector in Brazil, and in particular, Brazil's growth of internet users and people that can actually access the internet has risen significantly, which provides a great opportunity for tech-focused companies coming to Brazil. The other thing that's very important to remember as well is that Brazilians spend a lot of time on their phone. In fact, it's one of the quickest growing markets for telecommunication firms and smartphones. Obviously, technology, Samsung have seen the boost in revenues from Brazil as a country in particular. So a couple of key points out of the tech sector right now is internet usage is way up, as well as phone usage as well. Two little tidbits there that I think Graziano was going to look at. He also mentioned the fact that IPOs are becoming very big now in Brazil in particular. I think there was only 5 in 2019. I believe there's around 21 last year, and we're expecting more of those in 2021. And that's despite COVID and a turn down in the economy as well. So it's very, despite all of the problems with COVID, political instability and uncertainty, Brazil remains to be a very strong focal point for Latin-focused investors.
Okay, Ashley, so I will ask Sergio to continue the presentation because Graziano will come back soon to continue the second part of his presentation. So thank you for your comment, Ashley. We come back to you soon. So Sergio, please go ahead.
Absolutely. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
I miss so much being in Korea again. So it's a great honor for me to join you all in this panel. And let me see, do you see it now?
Yes.
Good. So talking about investment opportunities in Brazil is something that I love doing. And I had the privilege of being in Seoul and other cities in Korea for 2 times already. So I just wanted to leave my message here to you that I wish I were there with you. And not just visiting the city, but having great business contacts and eating bibimbap and kimchi as well. So this is just for you to know how much I love the Korean cuisine, culture, and people as well. Brazil is a huge country, as you have seen from Graziano's numbers, and it's one country with many opportunities indeed. And I used to tell my customers, Brazil is a mix of different Brazils. You have both leading and lagging, but we have to change the way we look at it. So my suggestion to investors is always now to look beyond the headlines that you see on the media. Usually we see something from a distance. So my advice to investors considering investing in Brazil is to take a look at the opportunities themselves and collecting reliable data so that they will know how to better make their investment decision process. So looking beyond the headlines, number one is the green check here saying, yes, it is a huge domestic market, 211 million people. It is a country with continental dimensions and one language. So you saw from Graziano's presentation, lots of countries that will fit in Brazil, and yet it still has the same very own language, which is Portuguese. The exchange rate in Brazil is currently extremely in favor for investments, and also for those who want to make Brazil a platform for exports as well. In Brazil, those 211 million people coexist with different backgrounds, and it is an important economy in Latin America. Yes, it is a democracy, and Brazil is growing every year, and there's a huge demand for goods and services. In terms of technology, Ashley was about to jump in that Brazil is composed by people who are naturally early adopters of technology. So the idea here is that if you're bringing anything extremely new, Brazilians will likely love incorporating those new trends in their lifestyles. You know, the numbers I have here, 150 million internet users, and now I heard Ashley and Graziano saying 120 million people using social media, and 95% of those users use on their mobile devices. So it's very easy for things to reach the entire country in right on your fingertips. There is a new labor law which was approved in 2017, replacing a law from 1943. This is bringing a better business environment for Brazil, as the pension reforms were approved in 2019, which brings more stability in the future for the public expenditures in Brazil. Today, the president of Brazil announced a new package of red tape cutting in order to prepare Brazil for the OECD standards, because Brazil is going to apply for that. And yes, we have a stronger presence of Korean corporations. You saw from Graziano's presentation. And I personally helped Hyundai set its operations when I was leading an investment promotion agency in São Paulo State. But actually, we learned a lot from how to do business with Korean corporations. But you have also to look beyond the headlines for the points of attention, things that you might keep on your radar screen. Make sure. First, yes, Brazil needs an urgent tax reform, and it will still take some time for discussions, but it will move eventually because the corporate structure of Brazil is demanding for that. Another thing that I want to highlight is that infrastructure in Brazil varies from state to state, but there is an increase in a rise in the use of public-private partnerships and concessions to upgrade the quality of our infrastructure, from highways to ports, airports, regional airports, water ports, and so forth. So very important, because long story short, it is gonna reduce the cost for operating in Brazil. Yes, the COVID-19 impact is here on our economy and everyone else's, but my advice is that you will track the recovery in the domestic consumption post-COVID-19. Brazil is a huge market, and once it responds quickly, and it might be too late for you to decide to set an operation in Brazil because your competitors probably will already be there. So in terms of Brazil reinventing itself, I see that the application of Brazil, the willingness to applicate for the OECD is gonna require, lots of the changes we need to see. So today, I could see a concrete movement towards that direction. OECD will require from Brazil other standards. Brazil will have to comply with it. So this is good. Elections. In any country, elections always bring some kind of turmoil. So likewise in Brazil. So keep your eyes on elections at all levels, municipal, state, and federal. And yes, while you look at those things, take a look at what your competitors, which are already here, they are doing already in Brazil. But once we talk about Brazil, we saw it's a huge country. Many countries fit in Brazil. So where exactly in Brazil should a Korean company or any other international company set its operations? When we take a look at the population distribution per region, we see that when Graziano said Brazil, the southeastern region responds for more than 20% of the Brazilian GDP, but we have 42% of the Brazilian population here in the southeastern region of Brazil. But your strategy will depend, or the place where you're going to locate your business will depend strongly on what your business strategy is. Besides that, it will depend on what your business offers, what type of product or what type of service your company offers. It will also depend on what your company needs in terms of supply chain, in terms of logistics, in terms of qualified workforce, in terms of any natural resource that you have to have access to. It will depend a lot, and it will influence. But I dare to tell you that Brazil can offer you anything you need. But the challenge here is to know exactly where. And that's why we are working together here to provide it to you. And finally, last but not least, where your market is. It's very important because it will affect your decision-making process on location for a business. So my challenge today is to tell everyone, let's take a look at Brazil from another perspective. If the industries are still concentrated in the southeastern region of Brazil with highly concentrated industries, for example, the first green one, the first blue bar here, food products, 31% is located in the southeastern region, but you can supply from any other part of Brazil. Chemicals, 46.8, rubber, plastics, electrical machines. You can see all possibilities for you here. If you already see under those bars the name of an industry that you are operating in, so it's likely that you might look at the southeastern region. Cosmetics, for example, a huge presence in the southeastern region of Brazil, and pharmaceutical products, aerospace and defense as well. Embraer is based in the state of São Paulo, has a R&D center in Minas Gerais state. So this is something for you to consider. So I have put on purpose those 3 dots here to ask you to start looking at Brazil from a different perspective. It's time to broaden our view on Brazil. I personally started working with a state up north Brazil, with borders to Peru and Bolivia. And long story short, I was surprised when I saw that state, which has self-sufficiency in energy, able to supply energy to 100 million inhabitants all at once, with tax and location incentives, abundant in water, with offering us a route to the Pacific. Brazil is always looking at the Atlantic Ocean, but when we look at here, we can see a route to the Pacific, which is very strategic for the Korean businesses. A state which is rich in manganese, tin, copper, gold, niobium, tungsten, iron, granite, largest producer of beef, dairy, and fish, both cultivated and native fish. Delicious fish, by the way. Rice, corn, soybean, coffee. I never thought as a Brazilian that we could find coffee in Rondônia State. And they export it. They export cocoa for the chocolate makers as well. And not just for the domestic market, but also for the international markets. And a state which is focusing on sustainability. When you look at one of those other, we have 26 states. certainly one of those states will fit your requirements. But when you consider investing in any state in Brazil, I would look for states which offer you this kind of geo-referenced technology to support investments. They have mapped all the infrastructure, the mineral resources available, where exactly they are located, you know, agriculture, forestry, and natural reserves. This is the kind of information that I tell investors, look for those kind of informations. And you have the link there where you can get access to that. But again, it's more to bring a professional decision support to investors, because, you know, you might have had another experience in Brazil, but Brazil is professionalizing itself in supporting the foreign direct investments. Because I tell investors, there's no time for oops investments. Oops, too late. But information is key for your decision-making process. So what opportunities wait for you in Brazil? First of all, I see a huge demand for healthcare and pharma, plus telemedicine. With COVID, we have seen, you know, the medical category, the medicine doctors starting to use telemedicine to provide support to their patients using video conferencing tools. So this is amazing for imaging, for second opinions, and so forth. Metallurgy, machinery, and equipment. Brazil needs to boost its industrial park, so lots of demand for more added value machines with Industry 4.0, you know, and using 5G to connect those machines. So we will need new equipment too. Food and beverages. People stayed at home, so during the lockdown, they started eating and drinking more. So there's a huge demand for processed or natural food. I call it Anytech. That's a term I created. I think at least I created. I haven't checked whether someone else has created this, but I like this term Anytech. Agritech, technology which is applied to agriculture. Brazil is reducing the size of the properties, but is increasing productivity. Why and how? Using technology, applying to that. Aerospace and defense. Fintechs, large financial markets for demand for financial solutions in Brazil. EduTech, educational opportunities also for companies investing in technologies which allow you to take courses from a distance. Clean tech companies, anything that will reduce any impact in the environment, plus renewable energy. Brazil is rich in winds and in sun, so solar capacity for producing solar energy is amazing. So we need anything that comes to renewable energy. Brazil has a very sustainable energy matrix, with the largest amount coming from hydro, from biomass, sugarcane, ethanol, which is renewable itself. So very important if you are in that area. Media and digital services. Due to the COVID, the increased demand for those services is amazing. And from Brazil, you can ship your services to your digital services or media to virtually anywhere in the world. IT infrastructure, which boosts and supports that kind of media and digital services, very important. And any IT-related services, there has been an increase in the infrastructure offering in cloud computing. So major data centers have established themselves in Brazil to support that growth and the market. Hospitality. Although tourism is down in virtually anywhere in the world, I see hospitality as another demand which might take a closer attention on your side. Investors should take a look at that, because many assets are cheaper now in Brazil, and they might buy it and upgrade it and help it expand to other regions of Brazil. Startups. Brazil has a very good, environment for, the ecosystem to support startups. Birth, growth, and as they are nurtured, and they become those unicorns that Graziano mentioned briefly to us, and he will shortly come back. Continuing with the opportunities that wait for you in Brazil, not only in the southeastern region, but throughout the country. Semiconductors as well, there's an increasing demand for that, because we see also electric vehicles getting an increased appeal in Brazil. And recently, one in electric industry, two of them announced new factories in Brazil. So, but not just manufacturing the vehicles themselves, but batteries and components. We have lithium reserves in Brazil, which might, tell you, why not go to Brazil and produce batteries for electric vehicles, any kind of vehicles. I'm talking here about trucks, about buses and cars and scooters, anything that goes electrical, because as we had an early speaker today saying that mobility is key. Agriculture, farming is very important, and but not just farming for corn, rice, or soybeans, or coffee, fruits, but much more than that. I would include forestry with sustainable management of planted forests. When you add to that carbon credits market, increasing demand for that in Brazil, and everything towards sustainability. We need to work always thinking about sustainability of the environment and the economy itself and the business itself. Mining, very important mining options for all sorts of minerals throughout Brazil. Financial services, I talked about the fintechs, but financial services as a whole, including insurance and banking. We have major banks in Brazil, but the market is open for smaller banks to come in and enter that market. In terms of infrastructure, I highlighted that during the points of attention, but public-private partnerships and concessions are booming, so there's huge demand for new infrastructure going on in Brazil. Logistics plus mobility in smart cities. I think those three walk together. Logistics, bringing products and people from one place to another, and mobility, going from point A to point B in a very wise way, and smart cities that have a living brain, thinking and connecting everything and making things more sustainable, better for citizens, and a better experience for the users of the city, if I could call it like that. And my major dot here today is mergers and acquisitions. The favorable exchange rate is making Brazilian assets extremely cheap, but be careful. It's not because it's cheap that you should buy anything. It's you should add more criteria to see what you're gonna get and where what you're getting will take you in your strategy for Brazil. And one final, coming to my final comments here, calibrate the pace of your business with the industry's behavior post-COVID. This is an estimate that Bain Company issued in 2020, saying that, for example, distance learning will continue with a high demand for the long term, while food and beverages is stable in the long term. So although here I have seen an increase in that, home appliances, for example, there's a moderate recovery and slow recovery, for example, in workout facilities and gyms. Those are totally closed here because of the lockdown. And again, so if this is your business, take care, but take a look at other opportunities that you might have as well. And my conclusions here are, first, foreign companies do continue investing in Brazil. And they don't do that because of the headlines they read on anywhere. It's because they thoroughly study the market itself and the opportunities it offers. Then Brazil continues an opportunity that you cannot neglect. No investor should neglect Brazil. They should thoroughly assess the market, see the opportunities, and make their decisions based on facts. The real money, the real currency devaluation makes it really cheaper for foreign investors. Yesterday, the exchange rate was 5.7 reals per $1. And one tip here, targeting high income and population density can be a good strategy, but keep your eyes open to other regions of Brazil where you can source things that you will not be sourcing here in the southeastern part of Brazil. And entering this market does need preparation and local support. So having said that, I would say kamsahamnida, and thank you, muchas gracias, muito obrigado, and you have my contact here. I will leave it recorded for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sergio. So finally, let's see, Graziano, are you on?
Yes.
Okay, so
I'm back.
it was
I
lots of emotions. Okay, so thanks so much for coming
apologize.
back. Okay, so let's finish your
Okay.
presentation.
Thank you very much and apologize. I'm back. I will share again the screen. 1 second. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So I will start with the second part. I hope to finish as well this second part, but how to do business in a complex market and typical mistake to avoid. Who we are? Basically, we are an advisory company here, and we assisted more than 50 companies in Brazil. So we are talking about something that we do in day by day. So when you invest in Brazil, when you look Brazil, you need to manage all these parts. This is very important. Planning, the labor liability, the transfer prices, the logistic planning, because Brazil is very big, and we will have a look shortly in these topics. So what is important basically? Sales. We saw that Brazil is very big, and we can sell a lot in Brazil, but you need to manage also your cost in order to have a good gross margin. You need to manage also OPEX in order to have and arrive in a good EBITDA, but remember that we are in a profit before tax and before the financial effects. So, and the most important thing is the cash generation, and we need to be able to send the dividend to the stakeholders. In Brazil, we have a double treaty convention, but also we have an internal rule. And when we send dividend to the shareholders, foreign shareholders, we have zero withholding tax when we send dividends. So the most important flow to send money back is, of course, dividend. We will see some example here. So when we start to import, for example, from Korea or another country, we need to, it's very important to open a branch in Brazil or to settle a partnership with Brazilian company, because a very interesting operation is try to work and reduce the FOB price, respecting, of course, the transfer price, and gain in competitiveness. So you can have an interesting price here in Brazil and produce a good gross margin. And after, how we said before, distribute dividend to the stakeholders. So this is an example about a common knowledge. So does Brazil have a very expensive import cost? Not. I mean, if you look at other countries, you can see the average in terms of import tax, but it's very important to highlight that for taxes, these are all the taxes that we apply when we import in Brazil. And of course, we can have 50, 60, 70% of total indirect tax. But if you open a branch in Brazil, if you define a partnership with a local company, 4 taxes out of 5 are recoverable if you have here a branch. So these 1, 2, 3, and 4 are recoverable. I will show you a technical slide. Just one is a kind of example. In this moment, we are trying to import an electrical appliance here with its code, and we can see tax simulation. And it's normal that we do this in every kind of product that we want to import. So we start from the FOB price is 15 euro. We add more or less the cost of shipping and insurance, okay? And we arrive in a CIF price. Why this value is important? Because it's the starting point to apply all the tax. So first of all, we apply the import tax. The duty is 10, but in Brazil, tax are calculated on the new basis, unfortunately. So after that, we calculate the import tax, we arrive at 63 around euro, and after we will apply another tax is IPE, mean tax on industrial products. After, again, we increase the value, the amount, we arrive at 17, and we apply two kinds of tax. ICMS is like VAT, and PIS/COFINS are federal and estatal tax like TVA, and we arrive at 94 euro. After, we need to, of course, manage the customer clearance, the logistic, and if we don't have a company in Brazil, a branch, we need to use a trading of a distributor. So we arrive more or less in more than 100, means more than double the cost of FOB. This is wrong, because if you open a branch here in Brazil, you can recover, as we spoke before, this tax, and you can have a big saving in this part. So the really cost in Brazil for an import product, in this case is electrical appliance, is 68 and not 100. This is very important because it's the key for several companies that are able to do business here in Brazil, and again after try to distribute dividend. HR matter. So we say that we need to respect the local behavior. So for this reason, we try to encourage people in the right way with a fixed, maybe small salary, plus incentivizing variable, because the Brazilians have the cultural habit of making purchase out of their purchase power. So they spend money before to earn. So we try to structure MBO with the local personnel, and we put on the table some kind of management by object. For example, the first quarter, a first target, the sales manager reach the target, receive a small bonus, and so on. So quarterly number 2, number 3, number 4, and not a big bonus at the end of the year. This is an interesting point of view to motivate people to work with the local culture. Labor market, this is a kind of interesting thing, because we need to be able to create a good OPEX structure. Brazil is famous for being the only 5-time football champion in the world, but unfortunately is also the world champion in labor lawsuit, even if after November 2017 the number of labor lawsuits fell by half. So take care when you try to avoid to hire people in Brazil and hire consultant, because you need to manage in a proper way your OPEX cost, because otherwise the liability can appear after. Another problem, we have a big problem in unlicensed software. So here in Brazil, we have a big problem and a big penalty also on this. But the most important part and tricky is the tax system. This is the ministry, Paolo Guedes is the Minister of Economy, telling that Brazil is a manicomio, which does mean manicomio is a madhouse, means that is very and really complicated management, the tax system in Brazil. We can share these slides for you. This is a study coming from the World Bank, and it shows the world average in terms of time to spend to file taxes. The world average is 233 hours per year. We can see here, for example, Korea, great job, 174 hours per year, less than average. USA, India, China, and so where is Brazil here? Brazil is basically 1,500 hours per year, means more than 6 times the average. And then again, talking about tax system, we can I try to summarize here the two systems in Brazil. You can choose the real profit system and the presumed profit system. Real profit system is very simple, means that the tax are imposed on the company profit. So revenue less cost equal to profit. You can apply 34%, and this is the system. But the presumed profit system is very interesting and is based on the presumed net profit. So we calculate this applying a predetermined profit rate on the gross revenue, which is the restriction. You can manage this system only if you have a turnover less of 78 million of reais. But you can choose the system just one time. 1 second, please. Okay. One time, once per year. So try to imagine a startup company that invests in Brazil, open the foreign investor open a branch and basically invest. Probably the first year he will lose money, but if they choose the presumed profit system, they will pay tax on gross revenue anyways. So it's very important to choose the tax system at the beginning, and you can change only one time per year. So during the year, you need to keep what you choose. Currency hedge, because it's crucial to protect the transaction from a fluctuation of exchange rate, but we have here an expert after that can update us about this, Ashley. And just to have a quick recap, what we saw before. Big market in Brazil, big opportunity. After that we sell, we need to manage properly the gross margin. So if we import or if we produce here, we need to take care this part. After, we need to be able to manage G&A cost and OPEX cost, manage the import tax, manage the indirect tax in the system, cover the edge, basically the fluctuation, and try to produce a cash generation and distribute to the stakeholders. This is a good way to work. Please don't do this alone. It's very complicated. Maybe it's good to choose a consultant here, an advisor. You can choose as well Su Junko, that she speaks also Korean. So it's better than go alone. And again, this is the most important flow to give back the money to investors. Brazil, in terms of final consideration, seems easy. It's difficult indeed, and Sergio already showed to you the opportunity. So thank you very much for your attention. Again, apologize for my electrical break. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Graziano. Thank you so much. So let's continue. Ashley, can you continue your presentation on FX aspects?
Absolutely. Bear with. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So nice to meet everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to both Sergio and Graziano for what they did. A lot of the hard work's been done, talking about the positives and also the risks when entering into Brazil. There's a lot of political pressure, and obviously, as some of the other hosts mentioned, there's been certainly some political issues and COVID issues that have come out of the Brazilian economy in particular. What we're going to focus on, though, is some of the interesting issues that arise when dealing with an extremely volatile currency. Now, Brazil, against some of the other currencies, has been one of the worst performing currencies in the world. So anyone that is affected by foreign currency going into any new market should be very aware of what that volatility can do, both in a positive way and a negative way. Just quickly, I wanted to talk to you about how FX can kind of pop up in a new business going overseas. Obviously, there's the export receivables. So when you sell your product overseas, when you're importing technology or raw materials, intercompany payments. This is something that happens often with a number of multinational companies. Pretty much any firm nowadays has an office overseas that needs one, and you can do it so cheaply now because everyone's remote. Intercompany payments is something that we watch very closely. And another one that is often overlooked is foreign currency loans. Typically, when a new company sets up an office in a new country, they'll often support that subsidiary company or that child, and as a result, there may be a loan that occurs. It's important that you understand who owns that debt and which currency that's going to be paid back in. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail as we go through the presentation. Here's a couple of interesting charts, and everyone's going to be slightly different. But it's important to understand that when you're dealing with foreign currency, there is a time implication. And obviously that time is where you're going to start seeing the issues. From the time that you send an invoice or the time that you request payment or close your order books, there is going to be exposure to foreign currency. And the exposure occurs when the time that you want to get paid and so when you actually get paid, that fluctuation can occur between the spot price yesterday and the spot price today. We've seen all types of different businesses that work with us, but typically you'll see at least 2 to 8 weeks between the time that you actually send an invoice and get paid. There's 3 main types of risk. We're going to be focusing mostly on the transactional risk today, but there's also pricing risk. So when you're actually putting your order books out there and the time it takes to close those order books. Obviously, transactional risk is the one that we just spoke about, and translational risk as well, which is the value of the assets have changed. Again, these can be done very quickly, but also can take some serious time. Certain industries, such as manufacturing of large machinery, can take obviously, in some cases, years. Projects such as energy and agriculture projects, charity projects can take years in certain instances. So everyone should be aware of the time. Good news is that hedging costs in emerging markets has come down quite considerably due to the low interest rate environment. Hedging costs are down, and a lot more people are starting to look at ways in which they can manage their FX risk. So let's have a look at the currency pairing. This is not what you want to see as a company, but this is what you want to see as a risk manager in foreign currency. I build my business on volatility and movement like this. But as a company, what you're looking for is to stabilize this. As you can see, the annual volatility is around 20%. Just this quarter alone, we've seen volatility of around 10%. And the month itself is over 5%. The BRL change over the last year has been 20%. 3 years, it's 43%. If you look back at 10 years, we've lost 73% of the evaluation. Extremely volatile currency. And both Sergio and Graciano mentioned that it's actually one of the best times to be looking to invest in Brazil from a currency weakness standpoint. Your dollars, your Korean won are just going a lot more further than they would do normally. And we've started to see that. To give you kind of some context, we specialize in helping investment managers and their portfolio companies attract foreign capital and helping them understand and know about the risks that are associated with investing into Brazil. Brazil is a very strong market of ours. Myself, as an entrepreneur, I'm investing heavily in our Brazilian team and building our opportunities because we see it as a very dynamic and opportunistic country that we would like to help as many investors as we can get in and out of Brazil as successfully as possible. Here's just another chart of showing the Korean won against Brazil. You can see that it's pretty different. You're seeing a major weakening of the BRL against Korean won, but it's certainly not as volatile as we have been. And that's mainly because the US dollar has strengthened across a basket of currencies. In fact, every currency has lost value against the US dollar if you look over the last couple of years. We are expecting that potentially to change as Biden has come into power. We think that he'll open up the economy, and as a result, we'll start seeing emerging markets become more attractive, and as a result, strengthen against the US dollar. One of the things that I mentioned earlier, and I thought this would be very interesting to kind of take a quick look, and I won't go into too much detail here, but something that's often overlooked is when you start lending money to a new foreign subsidiary, especially in one that is in currently a weakening state. Paying back these loans is very important, and it's very important that you ascertain who is going to pay that loan back and at what price and at what currency. If it is yourself that is lending the money and you want to make sure that you're fixing the amount of Korean won or US dollar that you're going to be receiving back from your Brazilian subsidiary, it's important that you put a plan in place or a budget rate to protect. A lot of people don't do that, and this is an example of the VAR on a typical loan agreement, and you can see that for the 2.3 principal amount with a 95% confidence level on VAR, the maximum you could lose is 1.4 million against a 2.3 amount. This is a huge amount of money. And this is using a volatility of 17.5%. 5 years to hedge a 5-year exposure in Brazil is expensive. And when you're thinking about investing in Brazil and borrowing money for your Brazilian subsidiary or lending money to your Brazilian subsidiary, you have to think about that. We're going to go into a couple of ideas around how you can maximize your hedge effectiveness whilst reducing the annual costs for a long period of time, something that we've done a lot for private equity firms and credit firms as well. Two basic types of derivatives that are used in Brazil. There's a couple of others. Futures contracts are often used, but they aren't the best for corporates, mainly because you're fixed to a contract size and also have to post margin, considerable margin, which can become very expensive, especially for a capital intensive business. You don't want to be tying up unnecessary capital when you're growing overseas. We've decided to take a look at forward and options here. These are two products that we use mostly for our Brazilian focused investors and clients. A forward is not a traditional forward that you would be using for a major contract. It is actually a non-deliverable forward, which means between two parties will agree to buy or sell an agreed amount on a specific due date and a defined forward rate. So they'll take into consideration the spot price that you lock in at, but also the interest rate differential between those two currencies. Now, the Brazilian Selic rate has dropped considerably compared to what it was a couple of years ago, but it still is quite a bit higher than what the US interest rates are. And it looks like it is set to increase at a quicker rate than what the US will be increasing at. And it's that interest rate differential that you'll need to be wary of, because that will affect the hedging costs on an ongoing basis. Another product that we use, and it is becoming a little bit more used in Brazil, are option products. For those that haven't used them in the past, they can be pretty daunting. Not every bank will offer them. They also offer the opportunity for banks to be a little bit less transparent about the pricing and then become extremely expensive. They also require some previous trading knowledge around options and can get quite complicated for finance managers who haven't used an option in the past. But to kind of give you the definition here, an option on a contract is a right but not the obligation to buy or sell particular product at a specific price on or before a certain expiration date. Typically, options price very similar to forwards. However, volatility in time become a premium, and it can become extremely expensive to use options in volatile times, such as the ones that we're seeing now. So we've talked about two basic derivative types, but there's a multitude of ways to use them. There's different strategies that you can create out of a blend of these products. We typically use static hedging. A lot of people would use static hedging for import and export. Rolling hedging is usually used for those that have a notional amount that they wish to push out on an ongoing basis. This is something that's very common for investment managers who have a foreign share class, who have investors, for example, that are wanting a local currency rate of return. Layered hedging, which is typically used by corporates that use a rolling cash flow forecast, something that we believe is a very I would say is my personal favorite way of managing a corporate's P&L and cash flow. It's a very effective way of smoothing out. In fact, if you look over here on the right, you'll see how a layered hedging strategy would actually effectively delay and smooth out the effects of a volatile BRL. The idea is that it smooths out the effects of foreign currency by ultimately using a layering effect, which will basically create a cost averaging over a period of time. The more accurate your forecasting is, the better it is, which is easier said than done when going into new markets and especially going through COVID. However, the beauty of this system is that as you become more accurate, you'll just ultimately add more weight to the layers. And it might be that you'll never be fully hedged for your 12-month exposures, but your 1 to 2 to 3 month hedges, your short-term exposures, you could be. And obviously, one of the areas that we help is to use our algorithms to determine what those layers should be. Dynamic hedging is used for those that have an opinion on the markets. We don't typically take a view on the markets, but a number of the clients that we work with have very much an idea of which way currencies are going to go, depending on political and economic indicators that they're following. So for that, we suggest, again, drawing a line in the sand and choosing a budget or a project rate that you should be looking to protect, and just making sure that you do all you can to protect that rate. And that might be using standing orders, options, another host of other products, or just simply ready, fire, aim approach to managing foreign currency. So again, I don't want to talk too much. We've talked a lot about the economy, so I don't really think there's much more to go over. One of the reasons why we like to discuss foreign currency right at the beginning is it should allow you to enter new markets with confidence, scaling safely and with more comfort and visibility, knowing what your protection rate should be to ensure that you can pay that back comfortably. It stabilizes a company's operating costs, but it also stabilizes a company's sales revenue as well. That's it from me.
Okay, Ashley, thank you so much for your presentation. So now we have about 10 minutes. We are going to finish the webinar by 10:30 a.m. Seoul time. So we have about 12 minutes to be exact. So let me represent our audience from Korea and address common questions that we get from the Korean companies. They might be, you must have answered these questions quite often, but so let me ask the first question. Is it necessary to have the local presence? I'm not saying that we need to establish a subsidiary. Is it necessary to have the local, the expats from Korea and in Brazil to open, to set up the company, to start the business, or is it something that we can do remotely, especially because we are during the pandemic, where these international travelers are almost impeded? So I would like to ask the question so that in sequence I will ask other questions. What is the best way to run business in this situation? Can we do it remotely? I think Graziano, maybe you can answer the question.
Of course. Thank you, Sue. That is common that foreign investors are looking in this moment to invest in Brazil. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. No, sorry, because again, it's a big storm. We have a big storm here. And basically, it's not necessary the presence of foreign investor here. Of course, foreign company need to issue a power of attorney to a physical person resident in Brazil. And they need to prepare a kind of documentation abroad, means the bylaw of the foreign company, the passport, some document, not 4 or 5 documents, okay? And after legalization, they can send in Brazil, and a Brazilian resident person could set up the company on behalf of foreign investor. So it's not necessary the presence here. And normally also to open the bank account, who will sign the document for the opening of account is the legal representative. And again, we need a person resident in Brazil to manage this. So it's not possible that a Korean resident in Korea is appointed as local director here. He can participate in, for example, in a board of the company.
If you allow me to jump in,
Yes.
just Graziano goes much more in detail to that, but I think that establishing or thinking well which strategy you're going to use to enter the Brazilian market is also extremely important, because depending on the strategy you want to use, for example, some companies might test their product or their service to see whether there is a response from the market which justifies their entering in the market. So even before establishing a subsidiary or having a local presence, sometimes they do that through a local distributor in order to test it. But that's my suggestion.
And I'd just like to add something as well from a British person in America who has a lot of Brazilian clients. I would say that it's just one of the friendliest places to do business. Everyone that I speak to in Brazil is willing to learn, and they want to be educated. They're hungry for knowledge and good quality people to help them bring their emerging market to a fully evolved market. And it doesn't feel like you're working with an emerging market. Sao Paulo is just ripe with talent and very, very smart people. I'm very lucky. I'm learning Portuguese very slowly, but everyone speaks English in almost perfect English. I've not found a problem with doing business at all in English. I have been hiring Portuguese speakers and investing myself in Brazil, and I look at it as a key market for me. The volatility in the market is obviously valuable to me, but the people that I'm working with have shown a real aptitude for taking on this FX risk and learning from it, which has been great. The other thing I thought which would be very interesting for some of our listeners is that 90% of Koreans in Brazil live in Sao Paulo, and there's 2,500, maybe 3,000 new businesses that are set up there, small to medium-sized businesses. You have a ready-made market in Sao Paulo, and the talent there, as I said, is just, it's one of the fintech, it is the fintech hub of Latin America, and I think you've got a really strong market there, ready-made to go.
Okay, great. Sergio, let me address another question. There are many good Brazilian companies with experience and solid structure that are very open to partner with the foreign investors. Okay, so maybe instead of doing only um, investment from zero for the foreign companies come to Brazil and start from zero, it is also interesting to partner with the local companies. But sometimes because of the cultural differences and because of the differences in the because of the difference in the philosophy of each company, it might be difficult to combine those two corporations. But what is your view on that possibility of the joint venture, partnering forces between the Brazilian company and Korean company doing business in Brazil?
Well, thanks for the question. I really suggest that companies willing to do business with a local partner to transfer technology, for example, and have them design or manufacture under a license agreement, for example, that they should be very secure about intellectual property is one thing that I would suggest. And second, is to make sure that the local partner has all the technical capacities to manufacture according to the standards of the Korean company. Many companies enter Brazil that way, and I think that's perfectly feasible. And I would suggest that you look for some kind of referrals about the capacity of the local company to meet those international standards. Many companies in Brazil, they comply with the CE certificate from the European Union, FDA from the United States, for example, and other international standards. That would be a very good starting point in my view.
Thank you so much. Yes, we have about 4 minutes. I think Graziano is having difficulty. I will let you guys give the final words to the Korean companies. Let's encourage them to come to Brazil, because more and more, the more Korean companies learn about Brazil, I think the Brazilian companies will also go to Korea and enter the Asian market through Korea. So I think that exchange of knowledge is really important, okay? So Sergio, actually, on behalf of Graziano, because we don't have him now, please let's encourage the Korean companies. You know, Brazil is a big market, but we need to work really hard.
Yes, my suggestion is that, mainly small and medium-sized companies, if Hyundai or Samsung did a very thorough study to come to Brazil, I think small and medium-sized companies should do too, because we have no time for oops investment. So do your homework, and we are here to support you in any possible way. And 감사합니다.
Okay, Ashley.
Yeah, as as someone that's growing his business, a small to medium-sized business growing in Brazil, valuing everything that Brazil has to offer, someone that's also set up a company during COVID and invested in Brazil despite not visiting, been able to partner with people from all walks of life. I couldn't think of a better place to grow my company. I can't wait to visit. I'm looking at APAC as a potential destination as well. The truth is, we're in a very lucky position because everyone's willing to do business now globally through a Teams meeting, and that gives us a very strong opportunity to be able to grow quickly. Brazil is exciting. It's not without its complexities, and as Sergio said there, you need to do your proper due diligence. But I don't think you'll be disappointed in what Brazil has to offer.
Okay, there are many disadvantages caused by the COVID-19, but one positive thing that we got from the COVID-19 is that we are now allowed to do more communication through remote platform. People are more encouraged and incentivized to do that. So let's make the best use of it. Just for your reference, speakers, we had the presence of various companies from Korea, institutions from the sectors like infrastructure, finance, technology. Also, we have the representatives of the companies from China. Okay, so actually we also, because of the taking the advantage of the time zone. So we also had the guests from China, which is really good to have their attendance here. Also, we had the presence of some companies from Brazil that have some collaboration with Korea. So thank you again for your presence. So again, on behalf of all the participants and supporters and sponsors, really, I'm very excited to have this webinar concluded in a very successful way. We would like to continue this discussion with the people from Korea. So thank you again for your excellent content. Also, on behalf of Graziano, he is not here with us, but let's send him also the words of congratulations. And this webinar was recorded, so once we finalize the edition, we will share the recording with you. So thank you again for your participation. Have a great day in Korea. Have a great night in Brazil and also China, by the way. Have a great day, China. So let's keep in touch and have a good day. Good night. Bye-bye. 감사합니다. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.